The surveillance camera captured everything. The moment the doctor declared brain death, the instant he ordered me to stop, and the 15 minutes that followed where I disobeyed every medical protocol to bring back a man everyone had given up on. That December night changed my career forever, and it almost cost me everything. My name is Diana Morales. I'm a paramedic with 12 years of experience, and this is the most controversial story of my life. What would you do if a doctor ordered you to let someone die? Tell me in the comments, because I need to know if I made the right choice. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood where ambulance sirens were as common as the L train rattling overhead. My father worked double shifts at a steel factory, my mother cleaned offices downtown, and I was the first in my family to finish college. I became a paramedic at 23, driven by something I couldn't quite name back then. Chicago taught me everything about emergency medicine. The bitter winters where hypothermia cases flooded our system. The summer violence that turned Saturday nights into war zones. The overdoses in alleyways. The construction accidents. The elderly folks who fell and couldn't get up. Every call shaped me, hardened me, prepared me for the impossible decisions that come with holding someone's life in your hands. In 2018, I transferred to Austin, Texas. I needed a change. Chicago had given me thick skin and sharp instincts, but it had also given me nightmares that wouldn't quit. Austin felt different. The warm evenings, the live music drifting from 6th Street, the slower pace that let me breathe again. I rented a small apartment in East Austin, near the Muller development, where you could smell breakfast tacos every morning and hear Spanish and English mixing in equal measure. I joined the Travis County EMS system, working 12-hour shifts that rotated between days and nights. My partner was Marcus Chen, a former firefighter from Houston who treated every call like a personal mission. We made a good team. He drove like a Formula One racer. I worked magic in the back of the ambulance. We saved lives. We lost some too. That's the job. December 19th, 2023 started like any winter day in Austin, which means it wasn't really winter at all. 58 degrees, clear skies, that crisp quality to the air that makes you forget it's almost Christmas. Marcus and I clocked in at 6 p.m. for the night shift. The station smelled like burnt coffee and the tacos someone had brought for dinner. We checked our rig, restocked supplies, tested equipment, standard protocol. Everything had to be perfect because you never knew when the call would come, the one that changes everything. At 8:42 p.m., the radio crackled to life. Major vehicle accident on Interstate 35 northbound, just past the Riverside Drive exit. Multiple vehicles involved, possible fatalities. We were the closest unit. Marcus hit the lights before dispatch finished talking. I was already pulling on my gloves, running through protocols in my head. Neither of us knew that in the next 2 hours, I would make a decision that would define my entire career and nearly destroy it. Then the accident scene looked like something from a disaster movie. A semi-truck had jackknifed across 3 lanes, and at least 5 cars had piled into it. The smell hit us first, that acrid mix of burned rubber, gasoline, and something worse, something organic. Fire trucks were already there, their red lights painting everything in apocalyptic shades. Police had shut down the entire northbound side. Traffic was backing up for miles, angry horns blaring into the cold night. Marcus parked our ambulance at an angle, creating a barrier. I grabbed my jump bag and ran toward the worst of it. A silver Mercedes was completely crushed against the truck's undercarriage. The driver's side was accordion folded, metal twisted into impossible shapes. Firefighters were already working with hydraulic tools, the screaming of metal on metal cutting through everything else. I could see him through the shattered window. An older man, probably early 70s, still strapped in his seat. His face was gray, blood running from a gash on his forehead, but his eyes were open. That's what got me. His eyes were open and trying to focus. I pushed past the firefighters. How long until we can extract him? The captain shook his head. 10 minutes minimum. Maybe 15. This metal is reinforced, military grade. Whoever this guy is, he was driving a tank. I looked at the man again. His lips were moving, trying to form words. I squeezed through a gap in the wreckage, glass crunching under my boots, and got close enough to check his pulse. Thready, rapid, weak. His breathing was shallow and labored. Punctured lung, probably. Internal bleeding, definitely. I pulled out my pen light and checked his pupils. Unequal response. Head trauma. This was bad. Really bad. Sir, can you hear me? I'm Diana. I'm a paramedic. We're going to get you out. His eyes locked onto mine. He whispered something I couldn't hear over the noise. I leaned closer, my ear nearly touching his bloody lips. Don't let me die here, please. Not like this. His voice had authority even in its weakness. This was someone used to giving orders, used to being obeyed. What's your name, sir? I asked. Whitmore. General Thomas Whitmore. Retired. My stomach dropped. A general. That explained the reinforced vehicle. It also meant this case would be scrutinized from every angle. The firefighters finally peeled back enough metal for us to access him properly. properly. I climbed into the wreckage with my equipment. Marcus fed me supplies from outside. IV line in, fluids running, cervical collar secured. The general's blood pressure was dropping fast. 80/50, then 70/40. His breathing became more ragged. I could hear the crackling in his chest with every breath. Definitely a punctured lung. We needed to move now. The firefighters worked faster, their tools screaming. Finally, after what felt like an eternity but was probably 12 minutes, we had enough space. We backboarded him carefully, every movement precise. As we lifted him onto our stretcher, his eyes rolled back, his pulse weakened to almost nothing. I looked at Marcus. We both knew. This man was dying right in front of us. What do you think happened next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The ambulance roared down Interstate 35, Marcus weaving through traffic that parted like the Red Sea when they heard our sirens. I was in the back with General Whitmore, and I had never worked harder to keep someone alive. His blood pressure crashed to 60/30. I couldn't get it higher no matter what I did. 2 large-bore IVs running wide open, fluids pouring into his system, but it wasn't enough. He was bleeding somewhere inside, probably his spleen or liver, and every second that passed meant more blood loss. His skin turned from gray to a ghastly white, cold and clammy under my fingers. I started chest compressions even though his heart was still technically beating, because that weak flutter wasn't circulating enough blood to keep his brain alive. The inside of the ambulance became my entire world. The rhythmic compression under my hands, the beeping of monitors that kept alarming, the diesel smell mixed with blood and sweat. My arms burned from the continuous compressions, but I couldn't stop. I thought about every patient I'd lost, every face that haunted my dreams. There was Mrs. Rodriguez, the grandmother who coded in front of her grandchildren while I fumbled with the intubation equipment. There was Jake Morrison, the college kid who overdosed at a party, and by the time we got the Narcan in, too much time had passed. There was the homeless man whose name I never learned, found behind a dumpster, already cold when we arrived. Each loss carved something out of me. Each one made me question if I was good enough, fast enough, smart enough to do this job. But there were victories too. The 6-year-old who fell into a pool and had no pulse for 11 minutes. I brought him back. He walked out of the hospital 2 weeks later. The construction worker whose arm was severed by machinery. I kept him stable long enough for surgical reattachment. He sent me a photo of himself holding his newborn daughter with both hands, the elderly woman having a massive stroke. I recognized the symptoms immediately, called ahead to the hospital, and she received clot-busting drugs within the golden hour. She recovered almost completely. These were my reasons, my proof that this impossible job mattered. Marcus's voice cut through my concentration. 5 minutes out, Diana. How's he doing? I looked at the monitors. Heart rate dropping, blood pressure barely registering, oxygen saturation in the 70s despite maximum supplemental oxygen. Not good. Call ahead. Tell them we need trauma surgery standing by. Tell them we have a VIP, a retired 3-star general, critical condition, probable internal hemorrhage, possible traumatic brain injury. They need everything ready. I could hear Marcus on the radio, his voice steady despite the urgency. Meanwhile, I adjusted my position, keeping the compressions steady and strong. The general's chest rose and fell mechanically with my efforts. I talked to him, even though he probably couldn't hear me. Stay with me, General. You've survived wars. You can survive this. Your family needs you. Don't you dare quit on me now. I don't know if I was talking to him or to myself, maybe both. The ambulance swung hard to the right, taking the hospital exit. I could see the lights of St. David's Medical Center through the back windows. Almost there. Just hold on a little longer. Thank you so much for staying with us this far. I promise you, the most intense part is still coming. Keep watching. Now the trauma bay doors exploded open as we wheeled General Whitmore in. St. David's emergency room was a controlled chaos of green scrubs and stainless steel. Nurses surrounded us immediately, connecting monitors, drawing blood, cutting away the general's clothing. I kept doing compressions, my arms screaming in protest, but I wouldn't stop until someone else took over. A young resident jumped in, taking over from me with fresh energy. I stepped back, gasping for air, my uniform soaked with sweat and blood. That's when I first saw Dr. James Harrison. He swept into the trauma bay like a storm, his presence commanding instant attention. 6'2", silver hair perfectly styled even at 9:30 at night, jaw sharp enough to cut glass. He wore navy blue scrubs and an air of absolute authority. I'd heard about him. Everyone in Austin EMS had. Cardiovascular surgeon, trained at Johns Hopkins, published in every major medical journal, success rate that bordered on miraculous. He was also known for being ruthless, demanding, and completely intolerant of anything less than perfection. Nurses whispered stories about him making residents cry. Surgical techs drew straws to avoid his operating room, but nobody questioned his skills. He saved people other surgeons pronounced dead. Dr. Harrison took one look at the monitors and started barking orders. His voice cut through everything else. Get me a chest x-ray now. Type and cross-match for 10 units. Page the OR. Tell them we have a hemorrhaging patient coming up. Move, people. Move. His hands worked while he talked, examining the general with practiced efficiency. He listened to the chest sounds, palpated the abdomen, checked the pupils. His face remained expressionless, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Concern, maybe even doubt. 20 minutes passed in a blur of activity. They pushed medications I couldn't pronounce. They hung blood products as fast as they could pump them in. The resident doing compressions was replaced by another, then another. Everyone was tiring. General Whitmore's body bounced with each compression, a grotesque puppet show. The monitors told the story in harsh electronic tones. Heart rate erratic, blood pressure unsustainable, oxygen levels critical. Dr. Harrison worked methodically, trying everything in his arsenal. Vasopressors to squeeze the blood vessels, calcium to strengthen heart contractions, bicarbonate to fight the building acid in the general's blood. Nothing worked. The numbers kept falling. Then it happened. The heart monitor went from erratic beeping to a nearly flat line, pulseless electrical activity. The heart was trying to beat, sending electrical signals, but no actual pumping was occurring. It was one step away from complete cardiac arrest. Dr. Harrison called for the defibrillator. They shocked the general once, twice, 3 times. Each shock made his body arch off the table like he was possessed. Between shocks, they resumed compressions. The sound of ribs cracking filled the room, a sickening crunch that made my stomach turn. That's normal during CPR, especially on elderly patients. Break ribs or let them die. Easy choice. Except the broken ribs weren't helping. Nothing was helping. Dr. Harrison stepped back from the table. He looked at the monitors, at the general's gray face, at the blood pressure reading that was essentially 0. I saw his jaw tighten. His hands, which had been moving constantly, went still. And then he said the words that would change everything. All right, everyone, stop. That's enough. Call it. Time of death, 9:53 p.m. The room froze. The resident doing compressions looked up, confused. A nurse actually gasped. I felt my heart stop. Sir? Someone asked. Dr. Harrison's voice was steel. I said stop. He's gone. Massive internal hemorrhage, probable aortic tear, traumatic brain injury. We've done everything possible. Continuing is futile and disrespectful to the deceased. Stop compressions. Now. Diana Morales, a paramedic with 12 years of experience, defies medical orders in a trauma room at St. David's Medical Center in Austin, Texas, on the night of December 19, 2023. Following a serious accident on I-35 in which General Thomas Whitmore, a retired 3-star, suffers massive internal bleeding, a liver laceration, and possible brain injury, Dr. James Harrison, a renowned cardiovascular surgeon, pronounces him dead at 9:53 p.m. after 25 minutes of fruitless efforts, including shocks, compressions, and medication. Diana, however, notices organized electrical activity on the monitor, pulseless electrical activity, PEA, with a subtle pattern, not full asystole, and refuses to stop. Ignoring repeated commands from Harrison, she continues compressions for another 15 minutes, administers epinephrine without authorization, practicing outside her hospital scope, physically blocks the doctor, and convinces a nurse to assist with additional shocks and medication. This insubordination, driven by instincts forged by past losses, like that of her father, who died after just 8 minutes of CPR, turns the room into a tense confrontation. Harrison threatens leave, security, and prosecution. Diana's partner, Marcus, begs her to stop. The team freezes in shock. Diana's physical exhaustion is brutal, arms burning, vision blurring, but her persistence reflects personal lessons. Her father, Giuseppe, a tireless factory worker who died of a heart attack, triumphant cases like a drowned child revived after 11 minutes without a pulse, and the general's plea at the scene, "Don't let me die here." In the 14th minute, after more epinephrine, amiodarone, and 200 joule shock, the monitor registers a spontaneous rhythm. Blood pressure rises from 0 to 60/40, oxygen saturation to 90%. Skin gains color. Harrison, initially furious, takes command. He intubates, stabilizes, and takes her to emergency surgery with Dr. Reeves. He finds a grade 4 liver laceration and a ruptured splenic artery. He repairs both despite massive blood loss. The general survives, with promising neurological signs, purposeful movements, reactive pupils, and no evident brain damage on scans. Post-resuscitation. Immediate consequences. Diana is suspended, confined to the hospital hospital for safety reasons. She faces the risk of losing her license, being prosecuted for assault, and practicing medicine illegally. Administrators intervene with a full investigation. The media leaks the story. Paramedic defies doctor and saves general, imposing a gag order. Harrison, shaken, privately admits to Diana he was wrong to declare her death prematurely. His 94% survival rate in 2,000 surgeries didn't prepare him for this. He feels humiliated but grateful. He reviews past cases, identifying 3 potentially preventable deaths due to prolonged CPR. 4 hours after surgery, the general stabilizes in the ICU. Diana, in emotional limbo, reflects on the costs. A destroyed career at 35, Chicago nightmares relived, an uncertain future without saving lives. She visits him through the window. Machines are breathing for him, but he's alive. A formal meeting with administration reinforces violations but suspends punishments pending a family prognosis. The general, awake days later, confirms partial consciousness during the event. He heard the death declaration and felt Diana's compressions as an anchor in the darkness. The hearing on February 1st at Travis County EMS headquarters lasts 6 hours. Evidence, radio audio, scene reports, and testimony. Marcus admits fear of error. Harrison, in pivotal testimony, condemns insubordination, but praises Diana's clinical judgment, high-quality CPR, remarkable stamina, cites literature on recoveries after 30 minutes of CPR, acknowledges his own error as a fallible human. A general, in a wheelchair with his family, wife Margaret, children David and Sarah, testifies he heard everything, felt the struggle. He praises Diana's courage as a military leader. She deviated from protocol to save a life, criticizing blind obedience. Sarah, an attorney, offers pro bono representation. A 2-hour deliberation results in a nuanced verdict: formal reprimand, additional training in hospital protocols, 6 months probation, license intact, return to work. This is not a precedent for routine rebellion, but it recognizes unique circumstances and recommends a systemic review to balance protocol rigidity with clinical judgment, medicine as both an art and a science. After the hearing, Harrison confronts Diana in the parking lot. He changed his practice, reviewing premature deaths. He apologizes for his initial treatment. Diana responds, both were essential. He saved her in surgery, she in trauma. 3 weeks of limbo. Away from work, Diana faces rumors: heroin versus Rekes, national coverage, isolation. Meeting with the general on January 10th, he reports fury at unjust deaths after surviving wars, confirms awareness, calls Diana a heroine. The family thanks him profusely. He insists on truth to reform the system. How many die from early withdrawal? Preserved essence. The central conflict is instinct versus protocol in borderline emergencies, where statistical data, injuries incompatible with life, collide with human variables. CPR quality, individual resilience, intuitive judgment. Diana embodies visceral dedication, shaped by personal traumas and victories. Harrison represents evidence-based authority, forced to confront fallibility. The general symbolizes high-impact lives saved by irregular acts. Major theme: saving lives justifies risks, but requires balance to avoid chaos. The system evolves through exceptions, honoring courage without anarchy. Ripple impact: revised protocols, shaken medical consciences, the message that following orders does not trump saving lives. Diana returns changed, validated, but aware of the cost, a decision that nearly destroyed everything, but redefined heroism in emergency medicine.